Established Rich coming right back at you. Today's conversation ain't about beef, and it's not about internet drama. And it ain't about who was joking and who wasn't. This is about business and what happens when you don't treat it like a business until it's too late. I'm talking about that moment on the Joe and Jada podcast when French Montana looked across the room at Fat Joe and said something that made the room shift. Not loud, not aggressive, but heavy. He said he never got what he was owed in publishing from All the Way Up. And you could see it immediately. Joe wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie. The story about All the Way Up is crazy.
Oh, I want to hear the story about All the Way Up. Go ahead. Let me hear it. French is on All the Way Up. Go ahead. Let me hear it.
Nah, hold on, kids. Now kids come back, I'm gonna tell them the story. So I'm just sitting back in the crib, crack hit me out of nowhere, like, yo, come by Cool and Dre studio. I got this joint. It's out of here. This is the one. I go to the studio, we knock it out. I'm not thinking none of it. The shit come out, take off, boom. We doing shows. Even Drake hit me. I was telling you, boy hit me like, yo, I need
Drake
a verse on that.
FaceTimed me 3 times.
Yeah, like I need a verse on that. So it was one of them. One time me and Crack doing a big ass show. That's how I know he was a real one. I'm like, yo, Crack, I never really told you, but I checked with my lawyer. He told me I ain't get no publishing on that song. I had 0 publishing on the song. I said, yo, Crack, I know you're not running a business like that. He was like, French, what you want me to do? I said, when I did the song with you, I was like, my brother got me. I ain't got to worry about nothing. Crack was like, you know what? He called his lawyer right on the spot. And he was like, you know what, French, here. I forgot what you gave me.
10%. But the thing is...
I think it was 5. It was 5.
No, it was 10%.
It was 5. It was 5. It was 5.
That's after the fact, right? Nah. You got 10%. You fucking got 10%. Well, you did not.
But you did that, though.
Yeah, of course.
You did that, though. No, you did
in
that.
the front.
You did that.
Happened to me, and that's after the paperwork.
Yeah. He went back and changed
when he's moving, this, that. He come and sit next to me. We had a award show. He said next to me, he said, yo, but you forgot how you told me.
How I told you?
You said, yo, Crack, you know it was that $1 million voice that made that shit go. He said, I looked at French. I said, why? He was like, yo, I put that $1 million gloss on that bitch. I said, all right, let's call a lawyer now. It's unacceptable. You know, with me, I don't feel good if my people don't make money with me.
Now, on the surface, the moment looked playful. Laughs and jokes back and forth about the numbers. 10%, 5%, or nothing at all. But if you've been around this game long enough, you know exactly what that was. That was unfinished business getting some airtime. That was a hit record with a receipt attached. And that's why it hit different. Because All the Way Up wasn't just a song. It was a moment, a career record, a cultural record. Radios, clubs, sports arenas, plaques on plaques. And hearing that there's still a question about who got paid what nearly a decade later tells you everything you need to know about how this industry really works. Now, here's where I want to slow this down, because this ain't about pointing fingers for fun. This is about how this shit actually happens. Most hit records don't start in boardrooms. They start vibing, people smoking, people laughing, people creating, without thinking about any paperwork. Somebody hums a hook, somebody says a line, somebody catches a feeling, and next thing you know, that vibe is a multi-million-dollar record. And that's where the problems begin. Because when it's all love in the room, nobody wants to talk about percentages. Nobody wants to talk about publishing. Nobody wants to talk about credit. It's all, my brother got me, we family. We'll handle that later. Until later shows up with a lawyer and a label and a checkbook. French said it himself. He trusted Joe. He believed it was a homeboy deal. He thought, I don't even have to worry about this. And that right there is where a lot of people lose. Because trust is not a contract. Loyalty is not publishing. And love don't hold up in court. Now, let's talk about that number. Joe says he gave 10%. French says it was 5. And French also said he had 0 publishing. And here's why I believe French. Not because I don't like Joe, but because we've heard this story too many times. Somebody creates the part that makes the record go, the hook, the feel, the part everybody remembers, and later they find out that part was valued way lower than it should have been. Let's be honest. Fat Joe has never been carried by his verses. His biggest records live and die on the hook, on the energy, on the moment, and All the Way Up is no different. So ask yourself this, does 5% sound like the value of the part that made the record really hit? Or does it sound like somebody getting cut in after the fact? And the part that stuck with me wasn't even a number. It was the look on Joe's face. That wasn't confusion. That was embarrassment. That was a man realizing this conversation wasn't supposed to happen on camera. Because once it's said out loud, you can't put it back. And let me say this too. This ain't the first time we've heard these stories about Joe and money. I'm not saying all of them are true. But when stories keep showing up from different directions, you got to pay attention. And I'm speaking from experience here. I've been in rooms where I helped create a song. Concept, lines, melody. Next thing I know, the record is out. On Spotify, on Apple Music, no phone call, no credit, no publishing. Not even my name in the writer section. All based on a handshake. And years later, you finally learn the lesson. This isn't personal. This is business. And the moment you confuse the two, you pay for it. This is how beef starts. Not over disrespect, over expectations. One person thinks he'll do right by me. The other person thinks this is what I decided. And by the time the record goes platinum, the damage is already done. And that's what I saw on this podcast. Not an argument, a realization. A realization that no matter how cool you think it is, no matter how long you've known somebody, no matter how much you trust them, you don't leave your future up to a vibe. Now, let's stay right here, because this is where the conversation gets real uncomfortable for a lot of people in the business. Because part of what we saw on that podcast wasn't just a money question. It was a culture question. Culture that treats business like it's optional until the money gets too big to ignore. See, hip-hop has always been built on vibes first. People linking up off energy, off trust, off history. And that works when nobody is making nothing. But the second a hit show up, the rules change, even if nobody wants to admit it. Labels get involved, lawyers get involved, distribution gets involved, and all that my brother got me talk started sounding real naive. That's what made this moment with French and Joe so important, because it wasn't a fight, it wasn't a shouting match. It was somebody realizing out loud that trust doesn't automatically turn into fairness. French said it himself. He ain't worried about it. He thought, this is Joe. This is my friend. He'll handle it. And that thinking is exactly how people get caught slipping. Because here's the hard truth. The person who controls the paperwork controls the story. Not the person who contributed. Not the person who came up with the idea. Not the person who made the record feel like a hit. The person who filed it decides what it's worth. And when you hear Joe say, I gave you 10%, and you hear French say, no, it was 5%, that gap isn't just about numbers. It's about power. One person had the power to decide, and one person had the power to accept. And that's a dangerous combination. Let's talk about contribution for a second. Hip-hop loves to downplay hooks when it's time to pay. But everybody knows what moves a record. People don't walk around quoting verses from all the way up. They remember the moment, the feel, the part that makes the crowd go up. And that part ain't accidental. Somebody created that. Somebody felt that out. So when you hear 5% or 10%, you gotta ask yourself, what value was really being placed on the thing that made the song live? Here's why this moment felt embarrassing for Joe. Not because he got caught, but because this conversation is usually done in private. Not on a couch with cameras rolling and other artists listening. And the fact that it came out like that tells you this been sitting, this been eating at something. Because people don't bring up money from a decade ago just a joke. They bring it up when they finally accept that what they expected to happen never happened. And this is where I want people listening to really pay attention. Most industry beef ain't about ego. It's about paper. It's about somebody feeling shorted, overlooked, or undersold. And a lot of times, the person on the short end blames themselves first. I should have spoke up. I should have asked. I should have handled it. Until one day they realized they was counting on somebody else to do the right thing. And that's a hard pill to swallow, because it forces you to admit that respect and fairness ain't the same thing. Somebody can love you and still pay you light. Somebody can call you family and still structure a deal that benefits them more than you. Not always out of malice, sometimes just out of position. And that's why this story keeps repeating in hip hop. People come in on trust, people leave with regret. And by the time the lesson fully lands, the money's already been spent. This ain't about vilifying nobody. This is about understanding that vibes don't protect you. Handshakes don't protect you. Friendships don't protect you when the label cutting the checks. Only paper does. And what we saw on that podcast was a real-time example of what happens when that lesson comes too late. Not an argument, not a beef, just a quiet moment where somebody realized they should have handled business when the music was still a vibe. And that's a lesson a lot of people only learn after the damage is done. See, the most dangerous thing in this business is not hate, it's assumption. Assuming somebody gonna do right by you. Assuming history means fairness. Assuming respect automatically equals payment. It don't. And the hardest part is realizing that too late. Realizing the same person you trusted with your creativity also controls the paperwork. Realizing that while you were vibing, somebody else was crunching numbers. And let me say this clear. This ain't about who is the bad guy or who is the good guy. This is about systems. The system rewards whoever moves first on the business side. The system does not care who came up with the idea, who felt the record first, who made the crowd move. It cares about who signed what and when. And if you ain't signed nothing, the system assumes you agreed to nothing. That's the part nobody likes to hear. French did what a lot of creative people do. He bet on a relationship over structure. He bet on history over paper. He bet on trust over clarity. And he found out what a lot of us found out the hard way. Trust don't cut checks. paper does. And what made that podcast moment so uncomfortable was the math. It was the reality that both of them was talking from two different places. One from memory, one from documentation. And in business, documentation always wins. This is how beef gets born. Not over disrespect, over unmet expectations. One person thinks he knows what I did. The other person thinks I paid what I thought I should. And years later, the gap becomes resentment. Not because anybody woke up evil, but because nobody locked it down when it mattered. And here's the part I want people listening to really take home. If a label is involved, it's no longer casual. If the record is going on an album, it's no longer a vibe. If there's potential for radio, streaming, and plaques, you handle business before you celebrate. Not after, not years later, not on the podcast. Because by then, the power's already shifted. This ain't just a music lesson. This is a life lesson. People will do what they can get away with. Not always because they're evil, but because the structure allows it. And the moment you leave your future in somebody else's hands, you accept the risk of their decisions. So if you're a creative, a writer, a producer, or just somebody with an idea, don't let the vibe blind you to the value. Don't let friendship replace agreement. And don't wait until the song is a hit to ask what you worth. Because by then, somebody else has already decided for you. What we saw was not a joke. It was a warning, a quiet one, a public one, and an embarrassing one for everybody involved. And if you pay attention, you won't have to learn this lesson the hard way. But hey, that's just my opinion. What's yours? Like, comment, subscribe, establish rich. I'll be back with another one. Peace.